A notification pops up from the system. It asks a person if he wishes to gain power, mentioning to him that it is his last chance to choose. With a furious look on his face while holding onto someone's head, he says that it's still not enough and that it's not nearly enough at all, and decides that he's going to change his life even if he has to sell his soul to the devil himself, and that he will achieve his revenge. A man and a woman are standing right at the entrance to their house while the story goes on, saying that in modern Japan, if any family member causes a scandal, then life means the end of it all. As they open the door and step outside, they see a swarm of reporters standing in front of their house, with mischievous grins on their faces as they ask them to comment, while some slant them for being children of the perverted cop. And some ask about their views on this matter, while others ask if their father is inside. These two children are Jinbo Yuki and Jinbo Yui, a second-year and a first-year high school student. They are both siblings. Yuki, overwhelmed by the crowd and their questions, then answers, saying that their father is inside the house, while Yui stands beside him with her head down in shame. Yuki stands in front of his sister, while the reporters shamelessly grin and ask him to bring their father out and ask them to first apologize to the public. Yui then speaks forth, apologizing to them. Looking at Yui, a reporter then asks if it is true that the perverted cop is also sleeping with his daughter. Hearing that, Yui makes a really shocked and hurtful expression. Without saying anything further, she runs away from the crowd. Bowing his head to the journalists, Yuki apologizes to them for that incident while gritting his teeth. He thinks to himself that it's enough and that he can't take it any longer. He stands there with his head bowed with gritted teeth as the reporters continue to slander him while mocking him as how he just apologized and how shameless he is for just doing so. While Yuki thinks to himself as to why he has to go through this, even though he did nothing wrong to deserve something like this. He then mentions how mass media, video streamers, and weekly magazines and the public will use even children as material if it means they can bash an easy target of evil. He continues as to how there's nowhere for them to belong to after being exposed by their messed up sense of justice. Yuki is currently on his knees with worry showing on his face. He says that there's nothing left. Two bullies stand in front of him. One of them holds his wallet and phone while the other has his foot on his face. He mocks him by saying how the perverted cop's son doesn't have any money on him. With his face under his foot, he looks up at them with gritted teeth and welled-up tears, thinking how it's been going on like this forever, even though he didn't do anything wrong. The bully then kicks him back, asking him about that look on his face he had. They stand there in front of him. One of them calls him pathetic while cracking his knuckles, while Yuki thinks to himself as to why does he always have to go through something like this? With a grin on his face, one of the delinquents pulls out his phone and shows Yuki the article of the incident his father has gotten himself into. He then says how it is perfect for the son of a cop who does such things. Pulling him slightly up by grabbing his hair, he asks him if his father never taught him that cops shouldn't commit sexual crimes. Suddenly, another person enters while dragging a student by his hair. He asks Yuki if he has any money. This person is Kume Akira, boss of the delinquent group. He then approaches Yuki and puts his hand on his shoulder, asking if he's Yuki, and tells him that if he doesn't have any money, then it can't be helped. He then pulls him closer to him, with an ominous grin on his face. He whispers into his ear, saying that if he doesn't have any money, then he will have to entertain them in a different way. While with a terrified look on his face, Yuki thinks to himself, if he's going to be used as a toy for the rest of his life. After having their fun beating Yuki and making him more miserable, they walk away, laughing. As tears flow like a river from his eyes, Yuki swears while thinking how there's no way to reverse this garbage situation. Suddenly, the system interface pops up in front of him, informing him that he's been chosen as the host of Tushin Bandits, while Yuki just looks at it in confusion. As he's on his way back home, he thinks to himself while looking at the floating window in front of him, if this is some kind of game thing. While Yui suddenly calls out to him, standing in front of their house, she welcomes him back home as she's taking the posters off their house. Getting to beside her, he tells her that he'll take off the posters, hearing that she's replied by saying that she'll just go and make dinner then. With a concerned look on his face, Yuki thinks to himself how long he has to endure this, and if it continues on at this rate, how long will Yui last and how it wasn't like this back then. He then goes into a flashback thinking how their dad raised them all by himself after their mom died. He then thinks back to the time when his dad gave a confident smile to him, telling him how their mother might start to worry seeing him mop around like that. He then tells him to give her a smile and let her know that he's off. He then mentions how they weren't wealthy by any means, and that they lived supporting each other with their dad working as a detective, and how he was often away from home and how much he admired his dad. Then, eventually, the moment came when the image of their dad spread across the social media, and from there their dad went insane because of the trauma. And so the flashback ends with that. Currently, after having done their work, Yuki and Yui both enter the room in which their dad is sitting with grown-out beard and hair, as he keeps muttering that he didn't do it. With a horrified look on his face, Yuki looks at their father's constantly deteriorating condition while he weakly calls out to him. Standing beside him, Yui tries to help him stand up, telling him that it's about time to have dinner, while their father continues muttering that he didn't do it. In a fit of anger, he throws away the food on the table, yelling out saying that he didn't do it. Yuki rushes over to hold their father. He tells him to calm down while he screams out that he didn't do it, as Yuki thinks to himself how he can't do this anymore. After a while, Yuki returns over after calming their father down. Standing by the doorstep to the kitchen, he asks if Yui is okay, as Yui is picking up the broken dishes off the floor. With a shocked expression on her face, she replies that she's fine. With a concerned look on his face, Yuki says how the case their father has been charged with might be false, as he continues to keep saying that he didn't do it. With a furious look on her face, she asks Yuki if he really believes what their father says and that he shouldn't believe the words of their father who has gone insane. He then looks down at his foot and asks her in doubt if their kind father would really do such a thing. To his surprise, their house's bell suddenly rings. As Yuki goes and opens the door to their house, there is a fat person standing in front of it. This person is one of those from the delinquent group. Then, with a mischievous grin on his face, he greets Yuki and tells him that it's time to play. Standing behind the door with worry and confusion visible on his face, he says that it's already late today. Hearing that, the delinquent asks if that is going to be okay with him. He then pulls out his phone and shows him a video of his pathetic self and tells him that he will release it if he doesn't come with him. Yuki sits on the bench in the park while the delinquent stands in front of him and says that he wants to play a bit more and asks him if he could come out for just a little bit. Looking down in despair, Yuki mentions how he just gave him some today and that he doesn't have any more. Suddenly, a punch hits Yuki right on his cheek. The punch throws Yuki a couple of meters away while the delinquent asks him as to what he is saying. With a satisfying grin on his face, the delinquent then starts kicking him in the gut, saying how he doesn't have the right to refuse. While he does so, he asks him if he thinks it's okay for him to be rebellious. Hearing that, Yuki replies by saying that he's not being rebellious. Wearing a mocking expression on his face, the delinquent grabs Yuki by his hair and pulls him up slightly and tells him that a toy shouldn't make any excuses and that he'll play with him for life. The delinquent then shoves a handful of sand into Yuki's mouth, saying how he's pissed after what Yuki just did and tells him that it's time to stop the talking, all while Yuki thinks to himself while tears start flowing out of his eyes to simply just endure it. As he has his mouth full of sand, another notification pops up from the system and tells him that he can change his life with abilities, while Yuki just looks at it in surprise. Yuki then starts to cough out the sand he was forced to eat while thinking to himself that there's no way he can change this situation. The system then tells him that he can't change it because he is weak-willed and has a habit of running away. He looks at it in confusion as to what it is trying to say. He then asks it what he should do to change this situation. Pushing his hands against the ground, he tries to stand up while the delinquent stands a couple of meters away from him, as he mentions how funny it is. Another notification pops up saying that it is the last chance for him to gain power. With a furious look on his face, Yuki thinks to himself how every single one of them says whatever they want, and if that's how he's going to be mocked even by something like this system, then he'll just use whatever this system has to offer. He then presses the yes button while thinking to himself that if game-like abilities really do exist, then it should give it to him, this thing called power. As soon as he pushes yes, another notification pops up saying that he has acquired the ability Hunt skill, talent theft, and that its effects are that he can steal the statue of people in his field of vision, but it can only be done to one person per day. Gritting his teeth in anger, he stands against this delinquent while thinking to himself that the days of being a toy are over. With rage and fury visible on his face, he takes up a boxing stance. He then tells the delinquent to come at him with everything he got in him. Doubting his decision, he stands there in front of the delinquent while thinking to himself that he'll definitely change this life of his starting from this moment. Pissed off by his cocky attitude, the delinquent asks him as to who he thinks he is talking to. While looking at the system calculating his status, he thinks to himself as to what this status thing is. After his status has been calculated, it shows his combat power, defense, agility, and insight charisma, and that they're really low in rank, with the majority being F rank and only defense and agility being E and D rank. With a hint of surprise in his eyes, he sees how his status is all too low. He then thinks to himself, curious as to what could be the status of this delinquent in front of him. Then suddenly a punch comes through the notification window right at his face. The punch hits Yuki and throws him back as the delinquent tells him to not look away while swearing at him. Yuki is now finally able to properly have a look at the delinquent's status and is surprised to see how his status is way higher than his own. Pissed off, he kicks at Yuki's gut once again as he's knocked over by that last punch while asking him if he's still gonna come at him. The system then notifies him, saying that if he wants to activate his talent theft ability, then he'll have to touch his opponent with his palm. Putting his foot on Yuki's face, the delinquent tells him to not act all high and mighty. With a grin on his face, the delinquent then tells him that his family's sins are his sins and that he's going to be a punching bag until the day he dies. He then shows him a video of Yui being bullied as Yui shouts at them to stop it, while he says how both the siblings are idiots. Filled with anger, he looks up from beneath his shoes and shouts at him, saying that his sister has nothing to do with this, while he thinks to himself how they are even laying their hands on his sister. Wearing a mocking grin on his face, he asks him if his sister really has nothing to do with it. He then tells him that a family shares collective responsibility. With a huge grin visible on his face, he tells him that he's being nice here and he'll forgive him if he were to simply just apologize to him, and how it's not even his own life anymore anyway. With a shocked expression visible on his face, Yuki thinks to himself if his life belongs to society, while the delinquent tells him to call himself a bottom-tier scum. Yuki then suddenly grabs his leg while thinking to himself how his life belongs to him and him only. And with that, Yuki Talent Theft Skull has been activated and he suddenly gets up and punches the delinquent away. A notification pops up saying that Yuki has successfully hunted the delinquent Jun's combat power, depicting that his own combat power has risen from F rank to D rank. Wiping off his chin, Jun sits there on the ground confusedly asking Yuki as to what just happened, while another system notification pops up showing that Jun's combat power has dropped to F rank. Still confused about these newfound powers, he hesitantly tells Jun to come at him. With his bruised cheek from Yuki's punch, he looks at Yuki while he speaks to himself asking as to what he's getting so cocky for. Yuki then dashes forward, hitting him once again and this time on another cheek of his. As Yuki continues to hit him, he thinks to himself how unbelievable it is for him to be overwhelming someone in terms of strength like this. Yuki then walks towards him and grabs him by his hair. With a furious look on his face, he says that it's still not enough to satisfy his anger. Wearing a terrified expression, Jun begs him to stop. Ignoring his pleas, Yuki launches a barrage of punches at him. Jun has fallen onto the ground after getting beaten up like that, while Yuki stands in front of him panting, while he exclaims how amazing this newfound power of his is. Suddenly, a notification pops up from the system that a new quest has been unlocked. Another two interfaces appear, saying that if he were to successfully complete this quest, then he'll get the ability Endless Fighting Spirit as a reward, and the conditions to complete this quest is to expose his father's truth. He's now walking to his home, while he continues to read something from the system interface while thinking to himself how his ability Skill Theft can steal someone's status just by touching. With confusion visible on his face, he asks himself if he's going to get abilities every time he clears certain conditions. Clenching his fists, he thinks to himself that with this newfound power of his, he might finally be able to escape this hellish life. With worry and confusion shown on his face, he thinks to himself as to what exactly is his dad's truth, and that there's only one way he can find that out. And for that, he'll have to have a proper talk with him. He has finally reached home, and as he enters the house, he announces that he's home. While walking towards their father's room, he thinks to himself, if Yui is already asleep, he then calls out to their father. He then opens the door to their father's room and sees that their father has committed suicide by hanging himself. As tears start to flow down his eyes, he screams out calling to their father. He then realizes that the justice that society brandishes might end up easily destroying a family. Yuki and Yui both are currently in the funeral home. Yuki sits there shocked, finding it hard to believe that their father committed suicide, while Yui sits beside him crying. Sitting there staring at this coffin, Yuki starts to sob, thinking to himself as he addresses to their father asking why he had to commit suicide. Suddenly, a guy wearing the same uniform as Yuki enters with a concerned look on his face. He then calls out to him saying that at a time like this, he just doesn't know what to say. This person is Jinta, Yuki's friend, and the only person who came to their father's funeral. Greeting him, Yui bows her head, while Yuki thanks him for coming to the funeral. With an emotional look on his face, he says that today also he'll be waiting for him at school. With a smile forming on his face, he thanks him for always doing so. Jinta's eyes then fall on a golden ring in Yuki's hand. He then asks him if this ring is what he thinks it is. Yuki then answers, saying that it's his dad's wedding ring, and that it's more like a keepsake. They then suddenly notice some women whispering around saying that the fact he committed suicide must mean that he admits to that incident. Jinta then whispers to Yuki, telling him not to worry about it. Looking down in sorrow, Yuki thinks to himself that once one's dead, everyone just says whatever they want, and if one's not in this world anymore, then there's no truth about the incident to expose. One of the delinquents then enters the funeral hall and calls out to Yuki, and with a mocking grin on his face, he apologizes for his loss. Putting his guard up, Yuki furiously asks him what he came here for. The delinquent then mockingly tells him how fighting at a funeral isn't good. With a mischievous expression on his face, he points his finger towards the entrance to the funeral hall and tells him that he should first go and look after his guests. There are several reporters outside making video of the funeral hall, as they say that it is the funeral hall of the former detective who was fired for sexual crimes and that he has committed suicide to get away from it. Yuki then suddenly rushes out of the funeral hall as the delinquent stands by its entrance and asks him if things really seem tough, and then with a grin on his face, he says, "How awful it is how the reporters sniff out all kinds of information." Yuki turns to face the delinquent as he thinks to himself, if this guy is the one who leaked it to the reporters. With a shocked expression on his face, Yuki asks, as to how far is he willing to go just to bully him? Ignoring his question, the delinquent asks him if it is okay for him to be distracted like this. He then points towards Yuki, asking him if he realizes that his sister is being surrounded by pestering reporters. The reporters continue with voicing their thoughts, how the fact that he committed suicide means that he admits to the sexual crimes. Yuki then suddenly interferes and covers the sobbing Yui as he shouts at the reporters to stop this nonsense, as he tells them as to what more is left to ask them who have lost their only parent. One of the reporters shouted at him, saying that there sure are things to ask as he committed suicide. Furious at their words, Yuki tells them that it is too scummy to ask the family about that. With a mocking laugh, one of the reporters responds by saying how it's their parent who's the actual scum. With an unreadable expression, Yui walks away after saying that she can't take this anymore. As Yui walks away, Yuki looks at her direction while the reporters start claiming that running away means that she's admitting it and request her to answer their questions. Yuki then walks after Yui and finds her sitting in the corridor of the funeral hall. Sitting beside her, he asks her if she's okay. She questions back, asking him if he's okay with all this that's been going around. With a concerned look on his face, he surely is not okay at all with how things have been and might be. With a terrifying look on her face, she says that their father definitely committed those sexual crimes and then he left them behind and ran away by killing himself. Worried about her mental state, he asks her if she understands what she's even saying. With a glint of insanity in her eyes, she tells him she understands what she's saying and that she's relieved that he's dead. Standing up in terror, he tells her how their father kept denying it till the end. And if she doesn't believe him, then what's the point anymore? With her head still down, she asks him as to why did he die if he wasn't trying to run away from his crimes. With a scary face, she asks her big brother if he really believes that their father was innocent. Looking at the mission interface in front of him, he thinks to himself how he still wants to believe in this board floating in front of him. A day has passed. Yuki is coming out of his house while thinking to himself that even if the system says truth, he clearly doesn't have any clues regarding it. With an angered expression, he looks at the system interface, thinking how this guy must have something related to their father's truth and suicide. While walking towards an intersection, he hears familiar voices as those voices speak, saying as to what kind of face he will make when he comes. These are the two delinquents who deliberately keep messing with him, while one of them says how he's probably making a face like it's the end of the world. As Yuki sneakily eavesdrops at their conversation, he hears them saying how that detective father of his actually committed suicide and that Akira is ruthless, as how skillfully he fabricated those sexual crimes on him. Yuki's expression turns to shock from curiosity on hearing how their father was framed for those sexual crimes he never even committed. Filled with rage and a desire to avenge his father, he approaches them and asks them what Akira did. With a worried look on his face, Jun asks him if he was listening to their conversation while the other guy snickers at Yuki's presence. As Yuki stands against them with his fists clenched in fury, he looks at their statuses while one then calmly denies saying anything about Akira. Rushing towards them, he thinks to himself that there are two enemies in front of him, and if he were to steal one person's status, then only one of them would get affected. Plus, he can only steal status once. Without thinking, he just decides to do it. One of them then throws a punch at his face, which he dodges by sliding. He then touches his knee and steals his combat power. He suddenly stands up and punches him right in his chin. As he punches the first one away, Jun suddenly gets behind him, ready to hit him down from the back. Cursing at him, he slams him right in the back with both his hands. Turning around, Yuki thinks to himself that fighting two people is still tough for him, and only if he could speak one more status, then he might be able to pull this fight off all by himself. Suddenly, the one he punched stealthily approaches him and hits him in the back of his head with a rock. With blood gushing out of his head, he falls to the ground. Standing in front of him with huge grins in their faces, they say how he's not different from his usual weak self, and that he's still their toy in the end. They mock him at how he just got beaten by something like this, while Yuki starts getting dizzy from all the blood loss. Lying on the ground, he thinks to himself that he can't lose consciousness and collapse yet, and that he needs to know the truth about his dad no matter what. With that, he suddenly grabs one of their legs with his hand. With his blood flowing onto the road, he asks them as to what they did to their father. With a shameless grin on his face, one of the delinquents tells him that he had sexual crimes fabricated against him by Akira. On hearing the truth about his father's incident, suddenly, a notification from the system pops up saying that a new ability has been acquired. Another system notification pops up, saying that he has acquired the skills Endless Fighting Spirit. Grabbing his father's wedding ring, he thinks to himself that he can't collapse yet, not anymore. With blood smeared across his upper face, he gets up as he thinks to himself. He announces that in their father's stead, he will make them pay for their crimes all by himself. A system notification then pops up, giving the details of the skill he just acquired. Its effect is that he can steal status from people in field of vision consecutively. A person holds up two capsules, while the others around him ask if it is the gummy in question. The person holding the gummy is none other than Akira, and around him are his two loyal henchmen. He tells them that it is the famous gummy and that he needs them to distribute it in school. Suddenly, Yuki and Yui's father mysteriously appears in front of Akira and his gang. He then asks if that truly is the gummy in question. With a serious look on his face, he then accuses how they are the source of the drugs circulating in the streets and tells them that anything is useless as he saw the handoff clearly. To his surprise, Akira suddenly jumps at him, throwing a punch to his face, which he easily dodges. He then subdues Akira and says that he's under arrest for being caught in the act. As Akira spends his time in the prison, he devises a plan to frame him and then get rid of him. Following his orders, one of his henchmen threatens a girl to do as she is told to, else they will spread a certain video of hers. In desperation to protect her own image, the girl agrees to do as they tell him to. Then, on a certain evening, their father is on a walk around some part of the city. Suddenly, that girl appears in front of him with her clothes ripped. Seeing her, he worriedly shouts at her, asking what happened to her. She then grabs his hand, asking him if he's a police officer. Seeing her like that, he asks her to calm down first before she speaks any further. With a worried look on her face, she asks him for help and tells him how her boyfriend is trying to force her to drink something weird. Something shaped like gummy. As their father takes the girl to safety, the girl holds onto his arm closely while someone takes a photo of that scene. That photo was taken by one of Akira's henchmen, and he soon receives the photo and decides to finally end the show on the detective. With a grin on his face, he says how his father went a bit too far with the girl. He then mockingly laughs at him, saying how it was lucky that he killed himself. Yuki grits his teeth after hearing their whole plan that eventually led to their father committing suicide. He then calls out to the system to display his current status. Their statuses then make themselves visible. Jun then calls it funny how Yuki is about to get beaten up by two people, while the guy beside him says how he's getting cocky because he got beaten up. He then suddenly realizes that if his defense power is lower than these guys, then it's meaningless to try to fight against them, and what he should steal next is defense power. One of the delinquents then rushes towards Yuki, ready to punch him, shouting as to what he is saying when he's all beaten up. As he blocks the punch, he thinks to himself that instead of increasing his own attack power, he should just weaken the opponent's defense power. As his defense power weakens, Yuki throws an uppercut at him. With his punch hitting him, he flies back and lies on the ground out cold. Seeing that, Jun stands there with a shocked expression on his face as he calls out to his fellow delinquent, asking as to what just happened all of a sudden. With a serious look in his eyes, Yuki tells him that he's the only one that's left. As Yuki grabs onto him, Jun begs him to calm down and shouldn't be rash with his choices. Jun soon realizes that he won't calm down and then falls onto his own knees and begs him to forgive him. Pissed off at him trying to beg for forgiveness, Yuki thinks to himself that no matter how much he apologizes, he won't be bringing back their father from the dead. He then grabs Jun by his hair as he thinks to himself that for what they did, nothing will ever be enough as atonement. While Jun kneels there confused as he suddenly grabs him by his hair. As Jun keeps begging for help, Yuki keeps ignoring those pleas and continues slamming his head into the ground until his blood has smeared the ground around him. Suddenly, a new quest appears telling him to publicly declare the truth. And for that, he'll get the skill Ability Borrowing as the reward. In a trance, Yuki then realizes that when conditions are cleared, then new quests appear. Walking forward, he thinks to himself that Kume Akira is the root of all evil and that their father didn't do anything wrong and he was just simply deceived. And that he'll make him admit that their father didn't do anything, he determines himself that he'll make Akira publicly declare the truth himself. Sitting in a classroom in school, Akira talks to himself asking as to how those guys are so slow. Afraid, Jinta asks Akira saying that it's his seat that he's sitting on and if he would be kind enough to let him have his seat. Suddenly, the door to that classroom opens. Yuki enters the classroom and greets Akira with a pissed-off look on his face. He then goes and stands behind him, turning back to face him. Akira asks him what he wants. With a grave look on his face, he asks if Akira knows about his father. Letting out a yawn, Akira says if he's talking about the detective who just recently committed suicide. Yuki curses at him and gets into a fighting stance. Suddenly, Jinta calls out to him. Standing behind Yuki and Akira, he worriedly asks him as to what is wrong with him as he's trying to start a fight all of a sudden. Yuki then boldly tells him that he surely is starting a fight with Akira. Hearing that, Akira slightly snickers a bit. With a worried expression on his face, Jinta tells how he isn't the type to fight. With a scary and angered expression on his face, Yuki tells him that it isn't a fight he is trying to start, and that it is revenge. With a shocked expression on his face, Jinta asks him as to what revenge does he mean. As Akira stands up from his seat, Akira then finally sees his status window, which really surprises him seeing how strong he is. Akira then asks him if he knows that the suicide was the stupid detective's own choice. With a menacing grin on his face, Akira denies having any connection to it. Lunging at him to punch, Yuki thinks to himself that he's the one who killed their father, and he will make him admit it, no matter how strong he is. Yuki is currently in a flashback as he remembers that day when Yui came to wake him up telling him that the breakfast is ready. Rubbing his eyes, Yuki opens his door and greets her. Pointing the pan at him, she warns to sometimes wake up by himself as Yuki stands there yawning. Walking away, Yuki nonchalantly tells her that she doesn't have to get so angry like that. Hearing that, Yui points the utensils at him saying how he's the one who's making her angry. Suddenly, the door to their house opens up and their father enters laughing, seeing as how they're fighting right from the morning. As the flashback continues, Yuki then mentions how their father always used to come home in the morning from work as eating breakfast together every day was a family rule in their house, as his father says that they should first have breakfast before everything. Then they all sit around the table, praying before they start eating. Taking a bite of the food, their father then mentions how it is really delicious and compliments Yui as how she has even surpassed their mother's cooking. With an excited look on her face, Yui asks him if he's telling the truth, while Yuki comments, saying how their mother still wins with the miso soup. Pointing her finger at him, she accuses him of how he always dampens the mood, while Yuki replies calmly saying how he just says what he thinks. Seeing their bickering, their father tells him that they should stop fighting and finish their food first. Their father then goes to their mother's memorial and wishes her mourning. He then places a bowl of rice beside her photo. Yuki then mentions how their mother eating together with them is also a rule. Their father then tells them that they should hurry up else they might get late for school. Looking at the grinning face of Akira, Yuki thinks to himself how Akira destroyed that happiness. As he lunges towards him to punch him, he thinks to himself that he'll never forgive him for taking away so many precious things from him. As he throws his punch, Akira easily dodges it while mocking him to come at him seriously. Standing in front of Akira, gritting his teeth, he thinks to himself that he surely should be more than strong enough as he just stole statuses earlier, but it doesn't seem to be working in front of Akira. Grabbing his own neck, Akira mentions how it isn't even a workout for him. With a serious expression on his face, Yuki thinks to himself that even if there is a difference in statuses, then all he needs to do is steal from him, while saying how this is where it all starts. With a mischievous grin on his face, Akira asks Yuki to keep entertaining him as much as he can. Yuki then dashes at him and grabs him by his waist as he pushes him back with his body weight. Getting pushed back, Akira asks him as to what he is trying to do by hugging him like that. With a grin on his face, he looks at Akira and says that he's stealing. To his sudden surprise, a notification pops up saying that his abilities can't be used against skill holders. Akira then throws a punch at him, successfully hitting his lower jaw. Flying away from the force of the punch, Yuki thinks to himself as to what it means that he can't use his skills on Akira. Yuki then falls on the ground, pushing some of the chairs back. Getting up, Yuki holds his chin as he thinks to himself what is going on and why he can't steal. With a menacing expression on his face, Akira asks him if he too has abilities like him, He then says that his ability is to release potential and raise status to maximum. Looking at Yuki, Akira tells him that he can't steal his status unless he steals the ability in itself. As Yuki stands there thinking to himself, if there are really other besides him who have these so-called abilities like him, suddenly a punch comes rushing at his face. After getting hit, he gets pushed back from the force of the punch as he questions it in his mind as to why other people beside him have abilities and why he wasn't told anything about something like this. Throwing a kick at his stomach, Akira shouts out saying how his stomach is wide open. Lying there coughing after having gotten hit in the stomach, Yuki thinks to himself as to what he should do without his abilities. Walking towards him, Akira asks him to entertain him more. Akira then grabs his leg and starts spinning him around while asking him if it's over already. He then throws him at the other seats. Standing behind him with a grin on his face, Akira compliments him for how well he spun. Looking at the blood in his hand, Yuki thinks to himself as to what he should do with so much blood coming out. Turning his back against him, he looks back at Yuki with gritted teeth as he tells him how he's still the same loser even with his newfound ability, and that in the end, he's still just a toy and nothing more. As he lies there on the floor, Jinta comes rushing to him asking him if he's okay. Reaching for their father's wedding ring, he asks the system to give it to him. A new ability. Anything is fine as long as he can beat Kume Akira. Suddenly, a person called the Tushin Bandit from somewhere far away from Akira speaks, saying that he shouldn't be so impatient and that he'll get it soon. With a shocked expression on his face, Yuki finally wakes up with a bandage on his head. Seeing him wake up, Yui expresses her relief that she's glad that he finally woke up. He then looks at Yui asking her why she is here. She tells him that Jinta carried him home, and she also mentions how much it worried her after she heard that he got into a fight in school. As he grabs his head in pain, she tells him to stay put and that she's going to bring him a compress. Looking outside the window, he thinks to himself how he slept until past noon, and soon he realizes how pathetically he lost to Akira. Looking at the system interface, he thinks to himself how Akira was also an ability user, that also being the reason why he couldn't defeat him like his underlings. He then opens the ability chart interface and thinks to himself that he realizes that there are other abilities, and that means that he can use other skills too. Looking at the quest window, he thinks to himself that there should be a possibility for him to win, especially using this borrowing ability, not status values but skills. He can simply just steal the abilities in itself. With a serious look on his face, he continues with his thought process that he could acquire this ability if he were to clear the conditions required for it. Getting up from the bed, he looks at his fist. He then thinks to himself that if he can nullify his power with this, then he can reach Akira and obtain the truth he needs to. Looking at the quest interface, he thinks to himself how he is even going to clear the conditions of this quest. He then suddenly hears voices coming from outside. It is one of the streamers holding his camera up in one hand while grabbing onto Yui's wrist with another. He tells his viewers that the justice streaming begins. Looking into the camera, he speaks, saying that today he has the daughter of the infamous perverted detective and asks everyone to comment a lot. Suddenly, Yuki arrives and grabs him by his hand and shouts at him to stop it already. As Yuki tightly grabs him by his wrist, he lets out an hurtful sound then asks him why he is grabbing his hand. Pulling his hand away from his, the streamer says that Yuki's actions can also be considered as the perverted son's blunder. With a pretty confident grin on his face, he turns his camera facing Yuki and asks him to publicly apologize for his current actions. Looking into his camera, he calls him the perverted son and shouts at him to say to his viewers. Crying her eyes out, she asks him to stop it. To stop torturing them already. Yuki then grabs onto his phone and announces that their father never committed any sexual crimes and that it's their family that are actually the victims. With a shocked expression on his face, the streamer asks him what does he think he's doing. Hearing that, Yui looks at her brother with a shocked expression on her face. Raising his voice, Yuki looks into the camera and says that their father did not commit any crimes and that he was falsely accused and died from it. As he publicly announces the truth behind his dad's case, a notification pops up saying that he has acquired the skill ability borrowing. Looking at his phone, the streamer curses at him and tells him that he can't just say whatever shit he just made up out of nowhere. He then tells his viewers that he will personally punish this liar for them. He then pulls out a knife saying how they should just quietly become their toys to play with whenever and wherever they want to. With a slightly worried expression on his face, Yuki thinks to himself, if this guy in front of him is stupid that he's even pulling out a knife like this out of nowhere, right in the middle of the road. The streamer trembles in fear and nervousness as he holds the knife in his hand. Yuki then takes a look at his status and thinks to himself that this guy is too weak even with a weapon in hand. Getting into his fighting stance, Yuki decides that he has no need to even use abilities against him. Putting his hand around Yui after senselessly beating that streamer to a pulp, he tells her that they should return home. Grabbing his head in one hand, Yuki thinks to himself as to how many times does he even has to fight. Suddenly a voice comes from somewhere telling him that he's strong. Hearing that, Yuki looks at the person standing in front of them, blocking their way. A fat person then appears in front of him. This person then asks him if he's Yuki, while he keeps emitting this purplish aura around him, indicating that he too is an ability user. He then activates his ability as he speaks the words, "My world, panicking world." Yuki then soon realizes that after he spoke those words, he isn't able to move his body at all, as if he had been chained down. Grinning with Yuki, he tells him that his own ability sure is pretty amazing, while Yuki thinks to himself if this guy is also an ability user. As drool comes flowing from his mouth as he continues to laugh, he asks him if it is really true that he can't use his ability without touching the other party. Putting his hand right on Yui's head, he leans in close with his tongue out. He then mentions how his ability is to invoke fear emotions in people within a certain range, rendering them unable to move. With a glint of ulterior motives in his eyes, he says how it is a rare hit after a long time. As he licks on Yui's neck, he says how much he's getting excited and how he wants to taste her. He then suddenly hits Yui on the back of her neck in an attempt to knock her out. Holding her unconscious body on his shoulder, he mentions how he might get scolded if he doesn't bring her in properly. With a scary grin on his face, he says that until they win the Olympus Front, they can't surely choose their means. With a helpless expression on his face, Yuki thinks to himself as to what this Olympus Front even is, and what he is even trying to do by taking Yui away. Holding out his hand toward him, he continues asking him in his mind to wait and not take her away. Gritting his teeth as he holds out his hand, he thinks to himself asking someone to not take his family away from him anymore. His eyes then suddenly fell on the knife the streamer had. With a worried expression on his face, he thinks to himself that if Yui disappears as well, then he'll truly be all alone. He then grabs the knife and decides that if it's for Yui's sake, then he will do anything. As the fat person continues to walk holding Yui on his shoulder, he complains that it's really demanding work, and that they should at least let him have a taste if they're kidnapping someone like her. Looking at Yui, he tells him how she looks pretty cute. With his tongue out, he tells himself that a little bit of her wouldn't be noticed. Suddenly, Yuki appears right behind him, saying that he shouldn't lay a hand on Yui as he has only business with him to work out. He then grabs Yui and jocks him right in his chin. With a scared expression on his face, the fat person looks at Yuki's bleeding hands and thinks to himself as to how he might have nullified the fear invoked by his ability with physical pain. With a burning determination in his eyes, Yuki thinks to himself that he can't afford to lose any more precious people, and with this newfound power of his, he will protect his family this time, for sure. Yuki then slowly and gently puts Yui aside on the road. With a glint of rage and fury in his eyes, he looks back at that fat person and speaks the exact same words he did when he showed himself. "My world, panicking world," depicting that Yuki has activated his skill borrowing ability and has temporarily borrowed his ability. And suddenly that fat person's body gets chained down by invisible chains while he shouts out, saying how his body doesn't move anymore. He then suddenly falls to his knees. With shock clearly visible in his eyes, he stutteringly asks Yuki as to why he can use his ability. With a grave, scary expression on his face, Yuki stares at him, saying that he won't understand anything at all. He then kicks his upper abdomen with heavy force, thinking to himself as he addresses him in his mind, saying that the fear created by his ability is nothing in comparison to his fear of losing his only family left. He then grabs his head and heavily slams it on the ground. With a raging fire in his eyes, he determines himself that he will definitely at least protect Yui. Suddenly, 2 notifications pop up saying that he has fought and won against an ability user, and from then on he can unlock higher tier abilities by touching other abilities. Suddenly, 3 more notification windows pop up saying that he has received 3 more abilities, them being Black Shadow ability, Sunglasses ability, and Falsified Documents, Fake News ability. With a shocked expression on his face, he thinks to himself, why did 3 abilities suddenly just got revealed all by themselves? He soon then realizes the reason for the revelation, them being receiving blade-based attack, defeating 5 consecutive opponents with combat status, and finally defeating an ability user. He thinks to himself, questioning if he'd get different abilities when he defeats ability users. He then holds his head after he reads the word 12 gods from the falsified document skill description, thinking as to what these gods and abilities are. Looking at the fat person lying in front of him, he says, how that guy earlier said something about 12 gods in Olympus Front. He then walks towards that guy and grabs him by his hair and asks him about the Olympus Front. With a fear-stricken voice, he says that the 12 gods of Olympus are fighting in that battle. He then grabs his collar and asks him if he's also one of these so-called 12 gods. Stutteringly, he denies that and says that he's different and Akira is the second god already. Putting him unconscious, Yuki leaves him there as he holds Yui in his arms while thinking to himself that whatever he just heard sounds incomprehensible to him, and that if he were to use his borrowing ability, then he'll surely be able to win against Akira. They've now reached their home and Yuki sits there on a chair beside Yui, who's sleeping. As he is currently looking at the system window, Yui starts waking up and then she calls out to him. With a worried expression on his face, he asks her if she's okay, to which he positively reacts saying that she is. She then points towards the ring in that chain on his neck, asking if it's their father's ring. He then tells her that he made it into a necklace because he wanted and also because it's their father's precious keepsake. Going into a flashback, Yuki remembers their father crying in front of their mother's photo saying that he will make sure to protect and keep their children safe and happy. He then mentions how their father never once showed weakness in front of them, and that all he can remember is their father's bright, heartwarming smile. But it was all because of those filths that their family, their happiness, everything was taken away from them. Looking at the photo frame of their father and Yui, together while rubbing the ring in his hand, he mentions how their father always protected him and Yui. With a saddened expression, Yui looks away and tells him that he isn't with them anymore. Letting Yui rest, he leaves the room with a determined expression. He takes his bandage off while thinking to himself that it's his turn to protect their father's dignity as well as Yui. And no matter what ability users appear from now on, he won't lose to one. And first he'll get revenge for his father on Akira with his borrowing ability. Back at school, Akira is sitting on a chair as he curses that fat person as how he couldn't even kidnap one woman. Jinta approaches Akira and tells him that the seat he has put his leg belongs to Yuki's. He then stands up from the seat and faces Jinta. He tells him that he will first kill Yuki and then win the Olympus Front. Yuki is currently on his way to his classroom. With a serious expression on his face, he thinks to himself that he doesn't care about anything related to this Olympus Front and that all he is going to do is avenge his father and protect his dignity. He then opens the door to his classroom and sees Akira in front of him. He looks at the scene in front of his eyes in shock. He sees Akira holding Jinta up by grabbing his head against a broken wall. Hearing the door open, Akira looks back at Yuki with a menacing grin on his face. With a worried expression on his face after seeing his only friend like that, he shouts at him, calling out his name. With drool flowing out of his mouth and blood from his head, he looks unconscious as his eyes seem to have rolled back from the immense pain he went through. Akira then throws Jinta away and asks Yuki if he's pissed because his friend was beaten up to a pulp or if it is because his perverted dad died. Hearing that, Yuki replies through gritted teeth saying how it's all because of his fabrication and thinks to himself that he'll never forgive him no matter what. With a menacing smile on his face, Akira asks him as to what he is spouting about this fabrication thing, and that he doesn't know anything regarding that matter, while the system reads about his ability, it being merciless power. Its effects are that it raises combat-related status to maximum potential. Hearing all that, Yuki screams at him saying that he killed his dad who was a detective. With a grin on his face, Akira says as to how hilarious it is that Yuki is calling him a murderer when it was his father who bought a prostitute and died on his own. He then walks and stands right in front of Yuki. While grabbing his head, he tells him that even if whatever he's saying is true, then even so what he can do to him. While gritting his teeth, Yuki grabs Akira's hand and says that he'll first make him bow down and apologize in front of their father's grave. He then activates his borrowing ability skill while thinking to himself how he's going to defeat him with his own ability and throws a punch at him. Before his punch could reach him, Akira's punch lands on Yuki's face, catching him off guard. With a grin on his face, with his hand still on Yuki's chin, Akira asks him if that is all he has in him. Yuki's eyes then suddenly fall upon the notification window, saying that he can't hunt skills of the 12 gods. Suddenly, another punch hits him right on his right chin. Yuki ends up hitting a wall as he gets pushed back by Akira's punch. Akira then rushes at Yuki, saying now bravado alone won't get him anymore in this world. Akira then launches a constant flurry of punches at Yuki. Akira then slams his head into the walls and tells him that no matter how many times he tries, he can never once beat him at all. He then grabs him and throws him at the seats in the class, saying how he will always be their toy his whole life. As he falls to the ground, Yuki's ring necklace falls beside him. Soon, Akira's eyes fall upon the ring. With a grin on his face, Akira gets ready to stomp down on it as he says how much he wants to check if this ring will break as easily as that perverted father of his. As his foot is just about to reach the ring, Yuki suddenly puts his hand in between them while thinking to himself that at least won't let him defile it. As his foot falls upon Yuki's hand, he looks at him surprised while Yuki tells him through his gritted teeth to not laugh at their father. Standing up, Yuki says how their father always protected their family and this town with his life. A notification window pops, saying that in order to activate the falsified documents ability, he will have to receive an ability attack from the 12 gods. He finally stands up with his eyes closed while thinking to himself that if he can just acquire that ability, then he'll finally see a chance of victory. Opening his eyes and getting into a fighting stance, he announces that this time he will protect their father's dignity. Seeing his determination, Akira pulls back his hand, ready to punch him with full force while activating his skill Merciless Power, with its effects being an increase in damage by 20% when attacking using arms. And so the punch suddenly hits Yuki right on his upper abdomen and it pushes him back right into the wall, cracking it on impact. Letting out a laugh, Akira says how he's just all talk. Suddenly, a notification pops up saying that the condition to activate falsified documents ability has been achieved. A new description of the falsified documents ability comes up, with it saying how it can temporarily falsify enemy abilities. After having acquired that ability, he stands while wiping off the sweat off his chin while thinking to himself that with this ability, he can surely best Akira. Suddenly, the students from different classes gather in order to watch the fight between Yuki and Akira. His eyes burn with determination to protect everything precious to him this time, as this is where the real battle begins. With a grin on his face, Akira commends him for his persistence. With a shocked expression on his face, he looks at the ability activation description as it says that he can change the abilities of those he touches. And in exchange, he will have to sacrifice a part of himself, he thinks to himself, if it means that he'll have to lose a part of his body. Looking at Akira, he realizes that if he were to take that attack first, then it'll all be over. He then suddenly runs in the direction of the crowd, seeing that Akira stands surprised. Among the crowd, he touches a guy and steals his agility status. Seeing him run towards the crowd, Akira runs after him, ready to punch as he mocks him about how he's talking big and then running away. As Akira's punch is about to hit him, he easily dodges it and his punch hits the ground, cracking it. He then continues to dodge each and every attack of his. With a slight look of worry on his face, he mocks him as how he's just suddenly darting around like a rabbit. To his surprise, Akira suddenly goes with a kick, which Yuki once again easily dodges by jumping on the wall as he thinks to himself that he might have accidentally stolen the ability of someone who might be the ace of some sport club. He then suddenly backflips over his head to land right behind him. After landing, he suddenly touches Akira's shoulder and his ability activates. A notification pops up saying that the price he'll have to pay for using the ability falsified documents would be his right eye. Suddenly, a pen appears in his hand, giving him the right to rewrite his Akira's ability as he thinks to himself that he'll gladly give up a part of his body after coming so far. He then rewrites Akira's ability, making it Merciless Power. Ability lower his combat-related status to their minimum potential instead of maximum. Turning behind, Akira throws a punch right into Yuki's face. He then giggles a bit, after seeing his attack connect after a long while. With 0 damage done, Yuki, with a horrifying expression, tells him that his fist won't work on him anymore. Shocked by it, he calls out his system window only to see that his statuses are all at their very lowest. Standing in front of him, Yuki tells him that he falsified his ability. Suddenly, Akira's eyes fall on Yuki's bleeding right eye, which makes him think as to what happened to his right eye. Gritting his teeth in anger, he punches Akira and this time it hits. With his punch hitting him, Akira gets thrown away. As Yuki lunges at Akira to punch him again, Akira thinks to himself how Yuki sacrificed his right eye just to falsify his ability. Yuki then hits Akira with a flurry of punches over and over again. Akira soon falls to his knees after getting hit so many times, while Yuki stands in front of him thinking to himself how because of this worthless scum, their father was humiliated, shamed, and eventually committed suicide. Yuki then grabs and slams him on the ground, on his face. Bleeding from his nose and mouth, Akira lies there as he mumbles, saying that he was wrong over and over again while stuttering. Yuki suddenly grabs Akira by his hair. He then slams his face into the ground heavily. As blood starts to flow down from his mouth like water, Yuki tells him that there's not a single chance he would ever forgive him, not even in a million lives. With blood and tears coming out from his eyes, he screams at him saying that there's no way he would ever forgive someone like him. As he continues slamming Akira's face into the ground, he tells him that no matter how much he apologizes, their father isn't going to return and demands him to at least admit their father's false accusations. As he finally slams his face into the ground, he admits it was his fault and that it was him who fabricated the detective's sexual crimes. With blood and tears falling down, Yuki lets out a loud cry while thinking to himself, though he was late, he finally cleared his dad's name off of false accusations. To his surprise, a notification suddenly pops up saying that the 12th god, Ares' host, has been rendered unable to fight. Suddenly, another notification window pops up saying that Yuki has now acquired the skill Secret Ninja Bag, as he has defeated one of the 12 gods, obtaining his first victory in Olympus Front. With a surprised expression on his face, he thinks to himself as to what this Olympus Front even is. Suddenly, the Tushin bandit appears beside him, saying that it's a battle among gods to decide the new creator. He then tells him that together with him, they should aim to obtain everything there is. The story then continues with the introduction of the Taoshin bandit, as he starts by introducing himself. He is a demigod, born from a human and a god in a sacred world where only gods are allowed to exist, with his mother being the human. And as a demigod, he somehow managed to be granted the rank of a god. He is currently going out of his house, and suddenly his mother calls out to him, telling him to wait. With a cheerful laugh, she tells him that he has forgotten something as she holds out a pouch to him. Letting out a sigh, he tells his mother to at least use respectful language, as he's already a god now. Hearing that, his mother asks him as to what he is saying. Scolding him, she tells him that God or Buddha doesn't matter. Oversleeping makes one half naked, and that she won't use respectful language for someone like that. Laughing out with a smile on her face, she tells him that if he's going to become a god, then he should at least become a proper god. As Bandit is walking through an open corridor, he hears someone screams. This bulky person is pulling the hairs of an angel while he tells her to let him do it. Kneeling beside him with her hair getting pulled by him, she begs him to stop doing that. Letting out his tongue, he nastily tells her how it's a god's command and that she should heed to it. She continues asking him to stop. He then starts ripping the clothes off her, as he tells her how angels have no right to refuse to a god's command. Suddenly, Bandit appears and tells him to stop it. With a grin on his face, he asks him as to who he thinks he's trying to order around. He then calls him a mere human. As a reply, Bandit tells him that he's ordering him, Ares, to stop it at this moment. Hearing that, maintaining his grin, Ares throws the angel to the ground. He then walks and stands right in front of Bandit, asking him if it's okay for him to be defying a god. Replying to him, Bandit mentions that he too has already become a god. Looking at Bandit with discontent, and he tells him that he is only half of a god, he then calls him a mixed breed. With a look of seriousness in his eyes, he tells Ares that, according to what he thinks, anyone who despises angels, the messenger of gods, is the lowest kind of god. Without further ado, Ares walks away from there as he says how boring it is to fight a lesser god. He then turns his head back at Bandit as he mentions that more interesting things await him. And several days after that, he returns home to find his mother's naked body covered in blood lying on the ground. With tears welling up in his eyes, he calls out to his mother. Sitting beside her, he holds her as she apologizes to him for being a human, while Bandit stutteringly asks her about the culprit. Bleeding away, she looks at her son's face and tells him how he might be ridiculed as a demigod, but having human blood means that he can become a god kinder to people than anyone. With blood flowing out of her eyes, she tells him how he won't become anything like that. She suddenly stops breathing. Seeing that, Bandit cries out while calling to his mother as he kneels there holding her in her own blood. In a different place, all the gathered gods get ready for the upcoming holy war. Holding onto Bandit's head, Ares enters while announcing how he caught a petty thief eavesdropping on them. Struggling against Ares' grip, he tells him to let go, saying that he didn't hear anything. Other gods call him a mixed breed and tell him how this isn't a place for him, a human, to loiter around in. Hearing that, Bandit raises his voice and tells them that he's no different than them, as he too is a child of God. Hearing him call himself a child of a god, Ares throws him at a pillar in fury, telling him that a mix of human and a low-tier god doesn't get to call himself a god. Letting out a light, he mentions how the human body wasn't so bad either. With a menacing grin forming on his face, he tells him of how humans are good as they make nice sounds when one toys with them. Hearing those words, he fits out in a rage, saying that he killed his mother. Ares replies by saying that he didn't kill her while calling him my toy. Letting out a heinous laugh, he says that humans are nothing but toys for the gods. Bandit then dashes towards Ares in a fit of rage while thinking to himself that God shouldn't be allowed to mock humans and his mother, as he shouts out to him to not mess with him. Before his attack could even reach him, Ares appears right behind Bandit and tells him that if he knows that a toy can't ever beat a god. With a huge grin on his face, he suddenly punches Bandit's chin. He then launches a barrage of punches at Bandit, saying how toys should quietly be toyed with. Suddenly, one of the gods tells Ares to stop, which makes him turn towards that god while gritting his teeth. That god then asks Ares if he realizes that a sacred battle is about to begin. As reply, Ares says that they should deal with Bandit first. While looking at the beaten Bandit, another god says that they should let him right to his heart's content in the Olympus Front, the holy war of the gods. Suddenly, a round ball appears and announces that they use one human as a host, and it's a battle where they kill each other to decide a new creator from among the 12 gods. While looking at Ares, Bandit announces that he'll kill him as a god in the Olympus Front. With the round ball opening its eye, it commences the beginning of the sacred and cruel battle to decide the creator. Bandit then speaks up saying, even if it's being the creator, he'll become one, and that he'll make a world where there's not a single unreasonable god, while he thinks to himself that it doesn't matter whether it's a god or a human, and no matter how painful the battle would be, he'll avenge his mother. On hearing that, the other gods mock him for this thinking style, saying how it is very human-like and that he can try it if he wants to. Bandit then mentions that's how his revenge journey began, and eventually he found Yuki and chose him as the host of the Tushin Bandit. They are now in his room as Bandit has now told him his story, and also about the Olympus Front. He's currently in a small form. Seeing that Yuki asks him if he changed his appearance, he replies by saying that maintaining this form is easiest in the mortal world. Yui suddenly runs up to Yuki's room and informs him that the dinner is ready and tells him that he doesn't have to force himself to go to school. Wearing a cheerful smile on his face, Yuki says that he's fine and that his health has recovered, and he can still see from one eye as he thinks to himself how after having defeated Akira, he achieved his revenge against him while sacrificing his eye as a collateral. He then goes to a flashback as to how he recorded his confession in front of the camera and freed his father of those crimes he was fabricated with, and after that, Akira was charged with defamation through fabrication. Sitting in his classroom, he talks to himself saying how much of a worrywart Yui is over him just losing an eye. Bandit appears beside him and tells him how he's the abnormal one for staying calm after losing an eye. Hearing that, Yuki replies by saying that it's not a problem for him as he managed to avenge their father. With a concerned look on his face, Jinta asks him if he's really okay with such an injury to his eye. Yuki just simply replies saying that he's totally fine. Grabbing him as tears start welling up in his eyes, Jinta loudly says how there's no way he's fine, and he then asks him if he really can't see out of one eye. Kneeling by his seat, Jinta worriedly says how he is so calm in comparison to him, while Yuki thinks to himself, asking if Jinta was really that much worried about him. Suddenly, Bandit appears and tells him that though it's good for him to be enjoying himself, he should still be on guard, as the Olympus Front still isn't over. Turning his face away from him, Yuki tells him that the battle of the 12 gods has nothing to do with him. With a glint of curiosity in his eyes, Jinta stands up and asks him if he really did just say something regarding the 12 gods. With a confused look on his face, seeing Jinta getting so excited, he asks him if he likes them. Jinta, without a moment's delay, replies, saying that he likes them. With a master of such knowledge, he says that there are 12 different gods governing various domains of their own. He starts with Poseidon, saying that he governs the sea, moving to Hephaestus, who governs the fire and smithing, to Demeter, who governs fertility, to the most famous Zeus, the omniscient and omnipotent. With an excited look on his face, he says that there are various such gods as well, and that he'll give him a book that will teach him more details about that. Hearing that, Yuki tries to act surprised and excited. Jinta then runs away, telling him to wait for him, while Bandit informs him how those guys might just suddenly attack him out of nowhere. Hitting him in the head, he tells Yuki how that is sure to happen as it is a battle to the death. As he hits him, Yuki reacts by saying that it hurts him. Floating beside Yuki, Bandit mentions that each has special abilities and fights with their host's life on the line, and that they're guys who won't hesitate to use brutal methods. With a worried look on his face, Yuki says that if there are that many enemies, then he might have to sacrifice his entire body, and not just another eye. Wearing a serious expression on his face, Bandit tells him that it's powerful but high risk, and suggests that he doesn't use that ability anymore. Confused by his suggestion, Yuki asks him as to why he shouldn't use it anymore. Suddenly moving through his blind spot and hitting him on his right cheek, Bandit tells him that losing an eye in combat becomes a fatal weakness to the fighter. Holding his cheek, Yuki then asks him what he should do. He then opens his skill window and goes to the skill he received for defeating Akira. He then reads out the description as it says, "It's an infinitely producing bag." He simply says that it's a four-dimensional pocket. Looking beside this seat, he tells him how he tried putting in things inside it that could be used as weapons. With a slightly worried look on his face, Bandit mentions, saying that there's no way he can defeat them with such things. While searching for some sort of more useful ability, he stumbles upon this ability called malicious voyeurism. Its effects being that it can help him read his opponent's mind, and the conditions to acquire it is that he will have to defeat 5 consecutive opponents with attack power above a certain level. While looking outside the window from his classroom, he thinks to himself how there is no reason to participate in this front, as it has nothing to do with him anymore, as he has already achieved his revenge. As Yuki reaches home from school, he finds Yui kneeling on the ground as she's cleaning the markings on their house. He then suddenly rushes towards her as he tells her that she should rest as her health might not have completely recovered yet. As reply, Yui tells him that she's completely fit and fine. With teary eyes, she tells him that she has to erase it no matter what, as it's been proven that their father's crime was a lie. With a surprised expression on his face, he looks at Yui, thinking to himself that it was just as he thought, and that Yui was feeling bothered by her behavior when the truth was still hidden. Yuki then also kneels beside her and tells her that he'll also help her in cleaning these. Yui then stands up and says that she'll need to buy more detergent if they are going to be doing it together. As Yui goes to buy detergent, Yuki continues with cleaning it as tears flow out of his eyes while he thinks to himself how he can finally get their lives back on track. The next moment, he stands right in front of a covered corpse who has the same silhouette and hair color as Yui, while a river of tears starts flowing out of his eyes. He then falls to his knees and lets out a loud cry as he narrates how his battle wasn't over yet. It's nighttime, and Yuki suddenly wakes up while calling out to Yui as he had a nightmare about her dying. Putting his head down, he starts crying as he thinks to himself how he has finally become all alone in this accursed world, losing his father and now his sister as well. 10 days have passed since Yui died, and currently, Yuki is walking towards a person in the rain. This person is Detective Hasegawa. He mentions how he goes to the police station every day, searching for information about the one who killed Yui. The detective first apologizes for having Yuki come to the police station every day. Without wasting any time, Yuki asks him if they have made any progress with Yui murder case. Scratching his head, the detective again apologizes and tells him that they can't share any information with civilians. Hearing that, Yuki simply walks away while thinking to himself how he can't get any information even after so long. With an enraged look on his face, while gritting his teeth, he continues how he can't give up and will surely find the culprit who killed Yui. He then calls out to Bandit, asking him if it was one of the 12 gods who killed her. With a glint of seriousness in his eyes, he tells him that though he can't say for certain, but there is a possibility that they targeted Yui to draw Yuki out, and asks him if he will still fight despite whoever his opponent is. Walking forward that the murderous intent in his eyes, Yuki replies saying that he surely would. With that grave, murderous look in his eyes, he thinks to himself that whoever it is that took Yui away from him will have to face his wrath. Yuki then suddenly turns to an alleyway with 5 bully-like people in, while thinking to himself how gaining valid information first is a must. Looking at them, he calls out to them asking himself if they're really combat power rank D. With scary, rude faces, they look at him asking him if his identity. Yuki then first assesses them out, seeing that they are total 5 in number, the number he needs to acquire the skill malicious voyeurism, and that this skill might really help him out in his fight against the 12 gods. With a grin on their faces, they talk amongst themselves that they should beat him up and take his money for video funds. Yuki stands in front of them in the rain, all alone, as those guys agree with that plan, while some others say how they might end up becoming some sort of street heroes. With a menacing grin on his face, Yuki mutters to himself, saying that the conditions to acquire the silent head skill, malicious voyeurism, has been met. With them getting creeped out by Yuki muttering to himself like that, they decide amongst themselves that they should finish this quickly ASAP and get out of here with his money. With a look of anger and rage showing on his face, Yuki thinks to himself that it was right of him to steal the status of the detective from earlier and decides that until he finds the culprit and rips him to shreds, he won't stop at all. Suddenly, one of the men lunges at him, calling him creepy, ready to punch him. Yuki easily dodges his punch and kicks his leg, making him fall on the ground right on his face. And so they all decide to attack him all together. Seeing them trying to attack together, Yuki dodges them all and appears right behind them. Getting into his stance, Yuki thinks to himself as how it is as he expected to be like, and that fighting this many people is really troublesome even for him. Suddenly just one of the lunges at him, ready to punch him as he shouts out at him to stand still and to stop darting around. As that person throws a punch at him, Yuki ducks and avoids it, following with an uppercut, while thinking to himself that he will crush them all one by one. Suddenly another person lunges at him, once again, ready to punch. Yuki then suddenly moves forward, dodges his punch and strikes back with an uppercut once again. While another one picks up a crate to throw at him, Yuki dodges it by running on the walls. He then hits that person with his elbow, while thinking to himself that the third person's down and that there's only two more left. Maintaining a calm expression, he then kicks the first person right in his upper abdomen. The last person then lunges at him with his fist pulled back, ready to punch. Yuki grabs this person by his chin and slams him into the ground in one go, rendering him unconscious. With that, the system notification pops up saying that the acquisition conditions have been fulfilled. With a concerned look on his face, Bandit appears and asks if he should try to be a bit more considerate with his methods. Looking at the mess he made, Yuki says that everything is fine as long as he can find who the culprit is. Suddenly, another notification pops up saying that Yuki has been granted another new ability, it being Silent Red Skill Malicious Voyeurism. Its effects are that it can allow him to read an opponent's mind. He then thinks to himself that with this skill, he'll finally be able to find the culprit. The same day, Detective Hasegawa is currently having a smoke in the rain while he talks to himself about how he got stuck with such an unpleasant case. To his surprise, he suddenly hears someone call out to him. He turns his head only to find Yuki back again to get answers to his questions. Tapping his cigarette, he tells him that he understands how he feels, but no matter how many times he comes, he can't tell him about the case. Yuki then asks him if he won't even tell him the cause of his sister's death. Scratching his head, the detective apologizes, saying that he can't go against the rules. Activating his ability, Yuki thinks to himself that if he hints at questions, the answers he wants might take surface in his thoughts, and from there, he'll know as to what happened to his sister. He then stares at him intently as the detective expresses his sadness on Yuki's loss. While as Yuki reads through his mind, he thinks to himself that he can't exactly tell the victim's brother that she was pierced through the abdomen with a sharp blade. He then asks her as to where her dead body was found. Looking away, the detective tells him that he can't share that information as well, while Yuki reads his thoughts as the detective thinks to himself that she was apparently found collapsed in the vacant lot on 3rd Street. Yuki then soon goes to the vacant lot on 3rd Street and sees an officer yawning on duty. He then calls out to this officer and asks him if he has heard anything about the recent incident that happened here. He questions him with his ability activated. The officer looks away and yawns, saying that he can't share the details of the case while he thinks to himself that it was a high school girl murder case, and that even the detectives are facing difficulties in finding any clues while he calls it a strange case. Yuki walks away while thinking to himself that it is definitely the place where Yui might have been killed. Putting his hand on his mouth, Yuki continues as how it seems so strange that such a brutal incident happened. Yet there are no clues about it, and how the detective in charge of the case couldn't even grasp anything either. And for that to happen, the culprit can't exactly be an ordinary human being. Suddenly a voice calls out to Yuki. With a surprised expression on his face, Yuki finds a large weapon lunging towards him. He then skillfully dodges it and then jumps back, while Bandit worriedly asks him if he's okay. Standing in front of him is a person with a spear in his hand, pointed at Yuki. With a grin on his face, the man mentions how he heard that his combat ability was low. Looking at this opponent, Yuki thinks to himself as to what is wrong with this guy in front of him. His eyes then fall on the spear in his hand. That makes him remember about the sharp blade and the clues that couldn't be gathered, and about a culprit who isn't an ordinary human being. As realization hits him, he grits his teeth in fury and asks him if he's the one who killed Yui. In a taunting tone, the man doesn't exactly deny Yuki's claims, nor does he agree to it. He then suddenly starts spinning his seat over his head and tells Yuki that if he wants to know the truth, then he should defeat him first for it. With gritted teeth and a slightly worried expression on his face, Yuki thinks to himself that in order to beat him, he'll have to absolutely avoid the spear no matter what he does, else it's over as soon as the spear even grazes him. Without any announcement, the man suddenly lunges at Yuki with his spear, which Yuki still dodges pretty easily. Dodging his spear, he leaks forward, thinking to himself that he'll first steal his ability. The man suddenly dodges Yuki's hand by ducking. He then calls him cunning for trying that. Letting out a laugh, the man says that he already knows that his ability activates by touching his opponent. He then hits Yuki's back with his spear's tail. He then tells him that as long as his spear reaches him, then there's no way for Yuki to win against him. He then suddenly activates his Flash Pulse skill, Star Radiant Spear Flash, and hits Yuki in the back with his spear blade. Yuki suddenly spits out blood right after the attack hits him.